"I'm too old for love," she said, but the cowboy whispered, "I've been waiting just for you." Clara Mitchell had always believed in being practical. Life, she thought, was about planning, working hard, and taking care of others. She had spent the better part of 58 years putting everyone else first. Her parents when they aged, her children when they were growing, and even her career, which had demanded long hours and late nights. Love, she decided long ago, was a luxury she could not afford. Not after losing herself in the roles life had given her. When her divorce became final 6 months ago, Clara felt relief and a quiet emptiness at the same time. She had parted ways with a man she had once loved, or at least thought she did. The years together had been comfortable, predictable, but the spark, if it had ever existed, was long gone. She told herself she was too old to start again, that romance belonged to young hearts with time to waste. Her friends encouraged her to try, suggesting dating apps, community events, and even blind introductions, but Clara always had a polite excuse ready. "I'm too old for love," she would say with a gentle laugh, though inside her chest a small, stubborn part of her wondered if maybe she had missed out on something truly wonderful. That's why she moved to a small town in Montana. The city had become suffocating. The noise, the crowds, the endless responsibilities, and Clara needed space. She wanted to breathe again. She wanted mornings where the air smelled of fresh grass, where she could watch the sunrise without rushing to meetings or deadlines. Her new home was a cozy 2-story house with a wooden porch that creaked underfoot, surrounded by wildflowers and open fields. She imagined herself here for the next few years, tending her garden, walking along the dirt roads, and living quietly, peacefully, and alone. The first few days were exactly what she had hoped for. Clara spent her mornings making coffee and sitting on the porch, listening to the soft hum of nature waking up. Birds chirped among the tall pines, and a small creek nearby whispered as it passed over stones. She walked the fields around her home, her boots crunching on the gravel paths, enjoying the feeling of the sun on her face. She began planting flowers and vegetables, relishing the satisfaction of soil between her fingers. Gardening had always been a source of joy, but now it was her way to reconnect with herself. Evenings were for reading. Clara had brought stacks of books. Some she had read years ago and wanted to revisit, others she had never touched. She sank into armchairs with cozy blankets, losing herself in stories that took her far away from her own quiet, lonely thoughts. Yet, even in these moments, there was a quiet ache. She sometimes imagined sitting with someone beside her on the porch, sharing tea, or watching the sunset together. She would quickly shake the thought away. "Too old," she whispered to herself again. "This is the life I chose. This is enough." The townspeople were curious about the new woman in town. Clara kept to herself mostly, but she smiled politely when neighbors waved from their fences, answered kindly when someone asked about the local library, and bought fresh bread from the small bakery every morning. She noticed how the town seemed like a living, breathing story. Children ran across open fields after school, laughing and shouting while old men and women sat on porches swapping stories about the years gone by. There was a warmth here, something she hadn't realized she missed in the city. The sense of community, the feeling that people cared for each other. Clara liked it, but she also liked keeping her distance. One afternoon she decided to explore the town further. The local market was small, but bright and lively. She wandered the aisles, picking up fresh vegetables, homemade cheese, and jars of honey. The shopkeeper, a friendly woman named Marge, offered her a sample of peach preserves, and they chatted about the weather, the town's history, and the upcoming rodeo. Clara laughed at Marge's stories, enjoying the rare feeling of being part of something familiar. Yet she kept her personal life private. She didn't mention her divorce or her feelings about being alone. She was determined to remain the quiet observer of her own life, not someone chasing the past or fearing the future. Evening came quickly, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Clara walked back to her home, carrying her small basket of groceries. She paused at the edge of a hill and watched as the sun dipped behind distant mountains. For a moment, the world seemed still, almost magical. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. "This," she thought, is enough. This is peace." She smiled softly, feeling a rare sense of contentment. But life has a way of changing things quietly, without warning. Clara had no idea that her carefully arranged world was about to be nudged, gently but insistently, into something entirely new. Something she had spent decades convincing herself she didn't need, but deep down, maybe she did. It started subtly. A friendly wave from a stranger on her morning walk. A warm smile from someone helping at the library. Small interactions that might have gone unnoticed, but they carried a strange, comforting energy. Clara didn't recognize it at first, but there was a sense of curiosity, a spark of life she hadn't felt in years. She found herself wondering, just for a moment, what it would be like to share her days with someone else. And just as quickly she silenced the thought.
"I'm too old," she reminded herself firmly, gripping the straps of her bag. "I'm happy like this."
"I don't need anything more." Her routine continued, predictable and soothing, yet these small signs made her feel alive. She started noticing things she had overlooked before. The laughter of children chasing butterflies, the smell of fresh bread in the morning, the way the wind danced through the trees. She realized that life in this town was full of quiet beauty, moments that were small but meaningful. And, in a way, these moments were teaching her something she had forgotten long ago. That life, no matter the age, always has room for new experiences. One evening after another peaceful day of gardening and reading, Clara sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile tea. The sky was deep blue, dotted with twinkling stars. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and let herself imagine, just for a second, what it would be like to have someone beside her, sharing this quiet wonder. She quickly pushed the thought away with a small laugh. "No," she said to herself. "I'm too old. Love isn't meant for me anymore." And yet, somewhere deep inside, a small, stubborn part of her heart refused to listen. It whispered that maybe, just maybe, life still had a surprise waiting for her. A surprise she had never expected, one that could change everything. As Clara went inside, turning off the lights and locking the doors, she felt a mixture of contentment and unease. The quiet of the night was comforting, but there was a subtle anticipation in the air, something she could not yet name. She had no idea that her life, so carefully arranged and peaceful, was on the brink of a new chapter, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, life, and the possibilities of her own heart. And so Clara Mitchell, the woman who had sworn she was too old for love, slept that night under a blanket of stars, unaware that change was coming, unaware that the quiet town she had chosen for solitude would soon become the place where her heart would awaken again. She dreamed peacefully, but the universe was already stirring, preparing to remind her that love in its quietest, truest form often comes when least expected, and sometimes it waits patiently just for the right person. Clara's mornings continued to follow the quiet rhythm she had come to love. She would wake before the sun, pull on her boots, and step outside to greet the world. The fields stretched endlessly in front of her home, and the soft hum of the creek nearby filled her ears as she inhaled the crisp, clean air. Yet even in the comfort of her routine, she felt the subtle stirrings of curiosity, a feeling she had almost forgotten. It was on a bright Saturday morning that Clara decided to visit the town's annual rodeo. She had heard about it from Marge at the bakery, who had insisted that the event was the heart of the town, and that anyone new should attend at least once. Clara had hesitated at first, not wanting to mingle with crowds or feel out of place. But something about the idea of seeing the town alive with energy, children laughing and families gathering, sparked a quiet excitement in her. She wanted to see it all for herself, even if only from the sidelines. The rodeo grounds were alive with color and sound. Stalls lined the edges, filled with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and local treats. Children ran past, carrying balloons, while laughter and music filled the air. The scent of popcorn and fried pies mingled with the earthy aroma of the fields. Clara wandered slowly, soaking it all in, her heart lighter than it had felt in years. She felt like an observer in a world she had almost forgotten existed, a world full of simple joys, community, and life. As she moved between the stalls, her attention was drawn to a man watching a group of riders from a distance. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a relaxed posture that suggested confidence without arrogance. His hair was sun-streaked, showing hints of silver, and his eyes were a warm, inviting brown. He wore a cowboy hat tilted slightly forward, a faded denim shirt, and well-worn boots. Clara noticed him more than she cared to admit, though she quickly shook her head, reminding herself she wasn't looking for anything. She smiled politely when their eyes met briefly, and he nodded with the ease of someone comfortable in his own skin. The day continued with Clara enjoying the sights and sounds of the rodeo. She watched riders expertly guiding their horses, their movements precise and powerful. Children cheered for the performers, and the crowd clapped along with every trick and turn. Clara felt a surge of admiration and wonder, a reminder of how thrilling life could be when one let themselves truly watch and participate in the moment. And somewhere between the cheers and laughter, she noticed the man again. He seemed to be moving gracefully through the crowd, assisting children who had dropped a hat or helping someone lift a basket. His calm, attentive presence caught her attention, and she found herself stealing glances, curious about who he was. After the rodeo, Clara decided to take a quiet walk along the edge of the nearby fields. The sun was beginning to dip low, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The man was there again, tending to a group of horses near a small wooden fence. One of the horses had tangled reins, and he worked patiently, speaking softly to the animal as he freed it. Clara watched from a distance, impressed by his gentleness and skill. She could see the connection he had with the horses, a bond built on trust, patience, and respect. Something about that reminded her of the kind of connection she had always dreamed of, though she had long told herself it was impossible. Gathering her courage, Clara approached slowly, intending only to ask a casual question about the horses. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Do these horses always behave so, calmly?" The man turned, his eyes meeting hers with a warmth that made her chest tighten slightly. "Not always," he replied with a kind smile. "It takes patience and respect. You can't rush them, or they won't trust you." Clara nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of ease in his presence. "I've never really worked with horses," she admitted. "I've admired them from afar, but that's about it." He chuckled softly, a low, comforting sound. Most people do at first. "I'm Luke, by the way." "Clara," she said, offering a small smile. "It's nice to meet you, Luke." They spoke for a few minutes, about the horses, the rodeo, and life in the town. Clara found herself laughing more than she had in weeks, surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. There was no pressure, no expectations, just a conversation between two people enjoying a shared moment. Luke had a calm way about him, a quiet confidence that made her feel safe and unhurried. For the first time in a long while, Clara noticed that her heart felt a little lighter. Over the next few weeks, Clara began seeing Luke around town more often. Sometimes it was at the local grocery store, other times at the library or the small bakery. Each time he greeted her with a smile and a friendly word. Their conversations were always light, filled with gentle humor, stories about the town, or observations about the weather. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her opinions, and her world, without ever prying too deeply. Clara was intrigued, though she reminded herself constantly that she was too old for romance, that these pleasant encounters were enough. One afternoon, Luke approached her while she was planting flowers in her garden. He carried a small basket of fresh vegetables from the market. "I thought you might like some of these," he said, offering them to her with a warm smile. Clara accepted them gratefully, noticing the care with which he had selected each item. "Thank you, Luke," she said softly. "That's very thoughtful of you." He shrugged modestly. "It's nothing. I enjoy helping where I can." They spent the next hour talking in her garden, discussing everything from the best ways to grow tomatoes to memories of their childhoods. Clara felt herself relaxing completely in his presence. There was no pretense, no judgment, only shared laughter and stories. When he finally left, she realized that she had been smiling for much longer than she had expected. Despite these pleasant encounters, Clara's thoughts were conflicted. She reminded herself constantly that she was too old for love. Her heart had been hurt before, and she wasn't sure she wanted to risk opening it again. Yet, every time she saw Luke, a small flicker of curiosity and warmth grew inside her. He was different from anyone she had ever met. Kind, patient, and genuinely interested in knowing her. She found herself looking forward to their meetings more than she wanted to admit, even if she refused to name it. Then came the day of the town fair, a larger event than the rodeo, with games, music, and a small parade. Clara wandered through the fair, enjoying the sights and sounds, when she noticed Luke again. This time he waved her over, a broad, easy smile on his face. She hesitated, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and caution, but then she walked toward him. "Clara," he called, his voice warm and welcoming. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to see the fair," she replied, smiling. "It looks wonderful." Luke offered to show her around, pointing out his favorite stalls and explaining the history of the parade. Clara found herself laughing and listening, swept up in the easy rhythm of their companionship. There was no rush, no expectations, just two people enjoying a day together. For the first time in decades, Clara felt seen and understood, not for what she had done or what she had lost, but for who she was in that moment. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Luke suggested they sit on a nearby bench to watch the parade. They sat side by side, not touching, but close enough that Clara could feel the warmth of his presence. The music played, children waved flags, and the town celebrated around them. Clara realized that she was smiling, truly smiling, and her heart felt lighter than it had in years. "Life's full of surprises, isn't it?" Luke said softly, as if reading her thoughts. Clara nodded, glancing at him. "It certainly is." He smiled, and in that simple gesture, Clara felt a quiet connection forming. A bond that didn't need words or declarations, only understanding and presence. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder what it might be like to share more days like this with someone who understood her so completely. And yet, she reminded herself once more, she was too old for love. She had come to this town seeking peace and quiet, not bromance. But as she walked home that evening, the images of Luke's kind eyes and gentle smile lingered in her mind, and she realized that perhaps, just perhaps, life had other plans. Plans that might include laughter, companionship, and a love she had long thought was no longer possible. Clara's heart was hesitant, cautious, but alive in a way it hadn't been in years. The quiet stirrings of curiosity had grown into something more, a feeling she could not ignore, no matter how hard she tried. And as she prepared for bed that night, she found herself smiling at the thought of the next encounter, wondering what small joys life might hold, and secretly hoping that Luke might be part of them. For Clara Mitchell, the woman who had sworn she was too old for love, the seeds of something new had been planted. The question was whether she would let them grow. Clara woke the next morning feeling a strange mix of excitement and hesitation. The memory of yesterday's fair and Luke's warm smile lingered in her mind like sunlight on a cold winter day. She had tried to tell herself that it was nothing, just a fleeting curiosity about a kind man in town. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Her heart, long, quiet, and cautious, was stirring in ways she hadn't felt in decades. She went about her morning routine as usual, making coffee, feeding the small birds that had begun to visit her garden, and checking her flower beds. Yet today, even the simple act of watering her plants felt infused with a quiet anticipation. Each movement seemed to carry a subtle joy, a feeling that life might hold surprises even now, at this stage of her journey. She caught herself smiling for no reason, shaking her head and murmuring, "I am too old for this," though her heart refused to agree. Later that day, while Clara was arranging her vegetables and herbs in the garden, she noticed Luke walking down the dirt path toward her house. He carried a small canvas bag, looking relaxed and easy, his hat tilted just slightly as the sun glinted off the edges. Clara's chest tightened, a flutter she hadn't felt in years, and she quickly turned back to her gardening, pretending she hadn't noticed him. "Good morning, Clara," Luke said warmly, his voice carrying across the garden.
I thought I might stop by and see how your garden is coming along. Good morning, Luke. The garden is doing well, thanks.
I was just checking on the tomatoes. He nodded appreciatively, kneeling briefly to examine the soil and plants. You have a real touch with these, he said. They're thriving. It's obvious you put care into everything you do. Clara felt a rush of warmth at his words, not just for the compliment, but for the sincerity in his voice. She realized that Luke had a way of noticing the little things, the effort she put into life quietly and without fanfare. His attention felt genuine, not the kind of hollow flattery she had experienced in the past. She wondered silently how she had spent so long doubting that someone could truly care. I enjoy gardening, she admitted softly. It's peaceful. It helps me think and feel alive. Luke smiled, his eyes crinkling in the corners. I understand that. There's something about tending to life, even small things, that reminds us what's important. For a moment the air between them was filled with quiet understanding, a gentle pause where words were unnecessary. Clara felt her heart beat a little faster, and she realized she wanted this moment to linger, to stretch indefinitely. She wanted to know more about this man who seemed to see her, not as a woman past her prime, but as someone full of life, experience, and stories waiting to be shared. Would you like to take a walk with me? Luke asked suddenly, breaking the silence. There's a trail not far from here that follows the creek. It's peaceful, and the view of the hills at sunset is something else. Clara hesitated. Part of her wanted to decline, reminding herself that she was too old for such excursions, too old for new attachments, too cautious to let herself feel. But another part, the small, insistent part of her heart, urged her to say yes. She looked at Luke, at the calm sincerity in his expression, and felt an inexplicable trust. All right, she said finally, a hint of nervous laughter in her voice. I'd like that. They set off together, walking side by side along the winding trail. The path was shaded by tall pines, the sunlight filtering through in gentle beams. Birds sang overhead, and the soft rustling of leaves accompanied the sound of the creek running nearby. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years, and she found herself speaking freely, telling Luke stories of her childhood, her family, and even moments she hadn't shared with anyone in a long time. Luke listened intently, never interrupting, offering gentle encouragement and thoughtful responses. He shared his own stories too, not to boast, but to connect, to show her that life had been filled with joys, struggles, and quiet moments of beauty for him as well. Clara felt a deep sense of camaraderie growing, a connection that transcended age or circumstance. She realized that with Luke, she could be herself completely, without pretending or hiding. As the sun began to sink behind the distant hills, Luke stopped at a small clearing by the creek. The golden light reflected off the water, painting the world in soft shades of orange and pink. He turned to Clara, his expression earnest. I'm glad you came today, he said quietly. I know life can be complicated, and well, sometimes people hesitate to open their hearts again. But I'm glad you're here with me. Clara felt a lump in her throat. He had been so certain that love at her age was a closed chapter. Yet here she was, standing in a quiet clearing, feeling emotions she had buried for decades. She wanted to say something, anything that would explain the sudden surge of feeling, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel the possibility of something more. They sat together on a fallen log, watching the sun dip lower, painting the sky in deeper hues. Clara felt the warmth of Luke's presence beside her, a comforting, steady energy that made her heart ache with longing she didn't fully understand. They didn't speak for a while, letting the sounds of the creek and the gentle wind fill the space between them. Clara realized that sometimes silence could be more intimate than words, more revealing, more honest.
Clara, Luke said softly, breaking the silence after several minutes. I know you've been through a lot in your life.
You've carried responsibilities, made sacrifices, and you've learned to protect your heart.
I respect that.
But I also want you to know that I've been hoping for someone like you to come into my life. Someone who sees the world with care, who values moments of peace, and who knows the meaning of patience and kindness. I've been waiting, not for just anyone, but for you." Clara's breath caught in her throat. The words were simple, yet they struck a deep chord within her. She felt tears welling in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief, of recognition. Here was a man who saw her, truly saw her, and was willing to wait for her heart to catch up. She had spent years convincing herself that love was no longer for her, but Luke's words challenged that belief in the gentlest, most profound way.
I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly.
"You don't have to say anything," Luke replied, his tone patient and understanding. "Just know that I mean every word. And I'll wait for you as long as you need." Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sensation she had almost forgotten: hope. She realized that her fear of vulnerability, of opening her heart again, had kept her from experiencing a joy she hadn't imagined possible. And yet, here it was, quiet and real, waiting for her to accept it. They remained in the clearing until the sun had completely set, the sky now deep blue dotted with stars. The gentle sound of the creek and the rustle of leaves surrounded them, creating a cocoon of peace. Clara felt a sense of serenity she had not known in years. She knew that her heart was beginning to trust again, slowly but surely, guided by the steady patience of a man who had waited for her, not for a fleeting attraction, but for her true self. As they walked back to her home under the soft light of the stars, Clara felt a shift within herself. She was no longer just the cautious, practical woman who had believed she was too old for love. She was someone open to possibility, willing to let her heart take a chance, even if only a small one at first. The world felt brighter, more vibrant, and full of hope. When they reached her porch, Luke paused, looking at her with a gentle smile. "Thank you for today," he said simply. "It was perfect." Clara smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Yes, it was. Thank you, Luke." As he tipped his hat and walked back toward his home, Clara stood on the porch, gazing at the stars. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, and for the first time in a long time she allowed herself to imagine a future that included joy, companionship, and maybe even love. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how fast her heart would heal, but she felt ready to take the next step. Slowly, gently, she was learning that love didn't have an age limit, and sometimes it appeared when least expected, waiting quietly for the right person to notice it. That night, as Clara drifted off to sleep, she thought of Luke and the gentle words he had spoken. For the first time in decades, she dreamed not of solitude or the quiet routines of life, but of connection, warmth, and a love that might finally be hers. Clara woke the next morning with a sense of quiet excitement she hadn't felt in decades. The memory of her walk with Luke by the creek lingered like sunlight, warming her heart in ways she had long forgotten. She smiled to herself as she sipped her morning coffee on the porch, feeling the cool breeze against her face and the gentle hum of the town waking around her. Something had changed. For the first time in years, she felt as though life held possibilities she had almost given up hoping for. Over the next few days, Clara and Luke continued to see each other around town. Each encounter was simple, yet meaningful. They would greet each other with warm smiles at the grocery store, exchange friendly chatter at the library, or share small tips and stories about gardening and cooking. There was no rush, no pressure, only the gentle rhythm of two people slowly discovering each other's worlds. Clara began noticing little things about Luke that made her heart soften. A small scar on his hand from years of working with horses, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the quiet patience with which he treated everyone around him. One afternoon, Luke invited Clara to help him at his ranch. She hesitated at first, thinking of her comfort zone and her carefully structured life. But the part of her heart that had begun to awaken urged her to say yes. She dressed in old jeans and a soft sweater, pulled on her boots, and followed him down the winding road to his property. The ranch was beautiful, open fields stretching as far as the eye could see, dotted with horses grazing peacefully. A barn stood in the center, sturdy and weathered, with the scent of hay and horses filling the air. "Welcome to my little corner of the world," Luke said, his smile wide and genuine. "I thought we could start by feeding the horses, and then I'll show you the rest of the ranch." Clara laughed softly. "I've never fed a horse before, but I'm willing to try." Luke guided her patiently, showing her how to offer hay, brush the horses, and speak gently so the animals would trust her. Clara felt a quiet thrill as she followed his instructions, surprised at how natural it felt. There was something comforting about working with the animals, the simplicity of the tasks, and the shared effort between them. She noticed how Luke's presence made the day feel lighter, brighter, and more alive. As they worked, they talked about their lives, their dreams, and even their fears. Clara shared stories of her childhood and her career, and Luke listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own experiences in return. The more they spoke, the more Clara felt a deep connection forming. It wasn't the kind of excitement that burned quickly and faded. It was steady, warm, and reassuring, like a fire that had been quietly waiting to be stoked back to life. By midday, they took a break under the shade of an old oak tree. Luke brought out a small picnic he had prepared: fresh bread, cheese, and a few sweet treats. They sat together on a blanket, enjoying the simple meal and the peaceful view of the rolling fields. Clara realized she was laughing freely, the sound mingling with the soft breeze, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in years. Luke's eyes sparkled when he laughed, and she felt a flutter in her chest she could no longer deny. "Clara," Luke said softly, after a comfortable silence, "I want you to know that being with you, it feels right. I've waited a long time for someone who shares the same values, the same patience, and the same appreciation for life's small joys." "I don't want to rush anything, but I also don't want to hide how much I enjoy being around you." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. His words were gentle, honest, and full of warmth. She had spent years building walls around her heart, convincing herself that love at this stage was impossible. Yet here was a man, patiently waiting, encouraging her to open herself slowly, to trust again. Her heart trembled with a mixture of hope and fear. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to say anything," he replied, taking her hand lightly in his. "Just know that I mean every word. And I'll be here, every step of the way, if you want me to be." Clara squeezed his hand gently, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that her hesitation, her fears, and her doubts were no match for the quiet, steady kindness Luke had shown her. She wanted to trust him, to let go, and to allow herself to feel the happiness she had denied herself for so long. The weeks that followed were filled with small adventures that became the building blocks of their growing bond. They spent mornings tending gardens, afternoons walking along the trails, and evenings cooking together or simply sitting on a porch, sharing stories and laughter. Clara discovered that Luke had a gentle way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary. A simple walk to the creek, a quiet moment with the horses, or even a shared cup of tea became moments she cherished deeply. One evening, as they watched the sun set behind the hills, Clara found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She had moved to this town seeking peace and solitude, certain that love was no longer part of her life. Yet, in the presence of Luke, she had discovered something she hadn't expected: joy, companionship, and the quiet thrill of being truly seen and appreciated. She realized that love wasn't about age or timing or perfection. It was about connection, patience, and the willingness to open one's heart, even after years of guarding it carefully. "Luke," she said softly, "I've been so afraid of this, of opening my heart again. But with you, it feels safe. It feels right." He smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I'm glad you feel that way, Clara. I promise I'll never rush you or make you feel pressured. I just want to be here, with you, as we figure this out together." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, not of sadness but of relief and gratitude. She had spent so long convincing herself that love was no longer possible, yet here she was, feeling it slowly bloom, gentle and steady, like the first rays of spring sunlight. She realized that Luke's patience, his kindness, and his unwavering respect had given her the courage to trust again. Days turned into weeks, and their bond deepened. They discovered shared passions, like a love for the quiet beauty of nature, a respect for animals, and an appreciation for simple joys. Clara found herself laughing more, feeling lighter, and experiencing a happiness she had long thought was behind her. Luke became not just a companion, but a source of inspiration, reminding her that life's later chapters could be just as full, meaningful, and beautiful as the earlier ones. One chilly evening, as the stars twinkled overhead, Luke suggested they sit by the fire pit outside her home. They wrapped themselves in blankets, sipping hot cocoa, and listened to the gentle crackle of the fire. Clara felt a deep sense of peace, the kind that comes from feeling truly understood and accepted. She realized that she had stopped measuring love by age, by rules, or by expectations. She had learned that love was patient, quiet, and transformative. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Clara admitted softly. "I didn't think it was possible for someone like me, at this stage of life, to feel alive like this." "Clara, life has a way of surprising us. Love doesn't follow rules or timelines. It comes quietly, patiently, and often when we least expect it." "You've been brave enough to let it in, and I promise I'll cherish that trust every single day." Clara's heart swelled with emotion. She realized that her walls had finally begun to crumble, not because she had been forced, but because she had chosen to trust someone who truly deserved it. She felt lighter, freer, and more alive than she had in years. As the fire crackled and the night grew quiet, Clara leaned her head on Luke's shoulder. She felt warmth, safety, and the undeniable truth that her heart, long closed off, was now open. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with companionship, laughter, and quiet love. She knew there would still be moments of doubt, of hesitation, as there always are in life. But she also knew that she was no longer facing them alone. Luke's patience, kindness, and unwavering presence had shown her that love didn't need to be loud or dramatic. It could be quiet, steady, and real. And that was exactly what she had been waiting for. That night, Clara fell asleep with a smile on her face, feeling the gentle certainty that she was no longer too old for love. She had discovered that opening her heart, trusting again, and embracing life's quiet joys could lead to a happiness she had long thought was behind her. And as she drifted into sleep, she felt a deep, unshakable gratitude for the man who had shown her that love was always possible, if one had the courage to accept it. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, steady joy that Clara had never imagined possible. She and Luke had settled into a comfortable rhythm, sharing mornings on the porch, afternoons with the animals on his ranch, and evenings cooking together or walking along the trails. Every day the connection between them grew stronger, yet it remained gentle, patient, and real, a love not rushed but built with care and respect. Clara marveled at the way life could surprise someone who thought all chances for love had passed. One sunny afternoon, Luke invited Clara to help him with a new project on the ranch. He was building a small wooden gazebo near the creek, a peaceful spot where anyone could sit and enjoy the view of the hills and the flowing water. Clara felt a thrill at being part of something tangible, a shared effort that symbolized more than just construction. It was a place where their memories, laughter, and quiet moments could live. "Are you sure I can help?" Clara asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Luke smiled, handing her a hammer. "Absolutely. I need your careful eye and steady hands. You've been helping me with the animals, the garden. Now you can help me build this too. There'll be more fun with both of us." Together they worked side by side. Luke guided her patiently, showing her how to measure and hammer, while Clara found satisfaction in contributing. The gazebo slowly took shape under their combined effort. Between hammering nails and aligning wooden beams, they shared stories, laughed at small mistakes, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of each other's company. Clara realized that these ordinary moments filled with teamwork and gentle companionship were some of the happiest of her life. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the fields, Luke stepped back and admired their work. The gazebo stood sturdy and welcoming, a quiet testament to their partnership. He turned to Clara, a soft smile on his face. It looks wonderful, doesn't it? But not as wonderful as this day, with you here. Clara felt her heart flutter. She had spent decades convincing herself that love was no longer possible, that she was too old for such joy. Yet here, standing beside Luke, she understood that love wasn't about age or timing. It was about presence, patience, and the willingness to share life with someone who truly cared. "You make everything feel special, Luke," she said softly. "Even ordinary moments feel magical with you." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "That's because you make them special too, Clara. Being with you has reminded me of what life can be, even after all these years. I've waited for someone like you, someone who understands the quiet joys and simple beauty of life." Clara's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of happiness. She realized that the walls she had built around her heart were no longer necessary. Here was a man who had waited patiently, not for a fleeting attraction, but for her true self. He had been brave enough to trust him, to open her heart again, and now she felt the deep warmth of love that she had long thought was impossible. As twilight deepened, Luke suggested they sit in the gazebo and watch the stars. They wrapped themselves in blankets, leaning close as the first stars appeared in the sky. The creek gurgled softly nearby, the gentle wind rustled the leaves, and the world seemed to hold its breath, as if honoring the quiet magic of the moment. "Clara," Luke said softly, his voice filled with emotion, "I know you've been cautious with your heart, and I respect that more than anything. But I want you to know something. I've been waiting for you, not just for today, not just for a moment, but for someone like you, someone patient, kind, and full of life. I've been waiting just for you." Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. The words were simple, yet they touched the deepest parts of her heart. She had spent years convincing herself that she was too old for love, that her best years had passed. Yet here was a man who not only saw her, but valued her, waited for her, and loved her without hesitation. Her chest swelled with emotion, and for a moment she could not speak. I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears glimmering in her eyes.
You don't have to say anything, Luke replied gently.
"Just feel it. That's enough." Clara closed her eyes and let herself feel. She felt the warmth of his hand, the steady presence beside her, and the quiet truth that she had waited for this moment without even knowing it. Her heart, long guarded and cautious, was finally free to embrace the love that had been patiently waiting. The weeks turned into months, and their relationship continued to grow in depth and understanding. They celebrated small victories together. The first blooms in Clara's garden, a successful ride with one of Luke's horses, the perfect loaf of bread from the bakery. They shared quiet evenings watching the sun set over the hills, feeling a deep contentment that came from simple companionship. Clara discovered that love didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It could be as gentle as a touch, as steady as a smile, and as real as the quiet moments shared between two people who truly understood each other. One crisp autumn morning, Clara and Luke took a walk along their favorite trail. The leaves crunched beneath their boots, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. Clara felt a sense of wonder she hadn't experienced in years. The beauty of nature, the warmth of Luke's hand in hers, and the realization that life could still hold surprises, even at this stage.
"Luke," she said softly, "I never thought I'd feel this way again."
"I never thought I'd find someone who makes ordinary days feel extraordinary." Luke squeezed her hand gently, his eyes warm and tender. "Clara, you've given me more than I could have imagined. You've reminded me that love isn't about age or timing. It's about connection, patience, and trust. And I promise I'll cherish every moment with you, every day, as long as I can." Clara felt a surge of emotion so strong it brought tears to her eyes. She realized that the love she had once thought was impossible had found her quietly, patiently, and beautifully. It wasn't about passion or urgency. It was about respect, understanding, and the willingness to be present for one another. That evening, Luke suggested they have dinner at her home. They cooked together, laughing as they prepared simple dishes, their movements in sync as if they had always known this rhythm. The table was small but welcoming, filled with the aroma of fresh ingredients and the warmth of shared effort. Clara felt a deep sense of belonging, not just in the meal they created, but in the life they were beginning to share together. After dinner, they sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars emerge one by one. The world was quiet, peaceful, and alive with possibility. Clara leaned against Luke, feeling his steady presence and the certainty of his care. She realized that she had finally allowed herself to embrace the happiness that had been waiting for her all along.
Luke, she said softly, I've spent so many years thinking I was too old for love.
But now, I see that love doesn't have an age. It comes when it's meant to, quietly, patiently, and sometimes when you least expect it. Luke smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face.
Exactly, Clara. Love isn't about timing or chance. It's about hearts being ready and willing.
And I'm so grateful that ours found each other. Clara felt a sense of completion, a feeling that her journey had led her to this very moment. She knew there would still be challenges, moments of doubt or hesitation, as life always brings, but she also knew that she was no longer alone. Luke's patience, kindness, and unwavering respect had shown her that love could be gentle, steady, and real. And that was exactly the kind of love she had always wanted, even if she hadn't realized it before. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Luke continued building their life together. They tended the garden, cared for the animals, and spent quiet evenings enjoying each other's company. Their laughter filled the air, and their shared stories created a bond deeper than anything Clara had ever known. She discovered that love at this stage of life was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about being present, sharing small moments, and caring for each other in ways both big and small. One evening, as they sat in their favorite spot by the creek, Clara felt the weight of her past lift from her shoulders. She thought of the years she had spent believing love was no longer possible, of the quiet loneliness she had accepted as normal. And now she felt a joy so complete and full that it made her heart ache with gratitude. Luke reached over and took her hand, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. "Clara," he said gently, "I've waited a long time for someone like you, and now that you're here, I promise to be by your side, to share life's quiet moments and its joys every single day." Clara smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. She leaned closer, feeling the warmth of his hand and the steady beat of his heart.
"I promise too," she whispered. "I never thought I'd find this, but now I know. It's never too late for love."
And so Clara Mitchell, the woman who had once believed she was too old for love, embraced a life filled with laughter, companionship, and quiet, steady happiness. She had learned that love doesn't follow rules or age limits. It comes when hearts are ready, patiently waiting for the moment they can bloom. And in Luke's arms, she discovered that sometimes the greatest joys in life arrive quietly, patiently, and just for you. Under the starlit sky, wrapped in warmth and love, Clara felt complete. The days of solitude had taught her patience and strength, but the days with Luke had taught her that it was never too late to open one's heart and embrace the unexpected. Together they faced the future with hope, laughter, and a love that was gentle, enduring, and beautifully theirs.